What's up guys, welcome back to the channel once again. My name is Tim Tacy. Kindly for watching me for the first time, remember to subscribe, like and also comment. To my returning viewers, thank you so much for your love, for your support, for always coming back and watch my video. Greetings to my brothers and sisters all the way from the Caribbean country. So guys, I want us to watch and listen this message from this lady. She has really come out and revealed the hidden secrets that the European country normally treat we as the black people, we as the Jamaicans, we as the Caribbean. So guys, before we dive in, let's all watch this video until the end. Then I'll come back with more comment. Remember to give this video a thumbs up, and all full credit goes to the original creator of these videos.
The criminals coming from Europe, arriving on the island of Haiti. That's the name of the entire island. That's what the Arawak people called it. And this for thousands of years before the criminals arrived from Europe. And when they arrive, they find the people there. It is estimated there were between 2 and 3.5 million Arawaks on the island in 1492. 11 years later, it was estimated less than 100,000 people were living on this island. A little before this estimate, as they noticed that the people were just dropping off like flies, the Europeans went to Jamaica, collected a portion of the population there, brought them to Haiti to dig for gold for them. And that population disappeared too. They went to Puerto Rico and brought boatloads of Arawak and Tainos and Caribs. And that population disappeared too in Haiti. We are told this whole process is supposed to be a civilizing process. We are told the Arawaks were savages. We are told, in some cases they even say they were, what's the word they like to say when you eat people? No, cannibals. Cannibals. They were cannibals. But you know, these Arawaks were living there for thousands of years and multiplying. 3.5 million people eliminated in less than 11 years. A few Europeans came. The Europeans were never more than a few thousand on the island. If we had 3.5 million cannibals on an island, and a few thousand Europeans came, and after 11 years, the cannibals were all dead, and the civilizers were still there. Is there something wrong with this information? Something very wrong. Very, very wrong there.
Certain countries have come to Africa for centuries to rob Africa of its resources. They should be admitting what they've done. Some are rich because of the resources they took from Africa. They never thought of helping Africa to develop. They subjugated Africa. They took the political power, economic power, and then made us, therefore, socially, to have no power at all. We had to fight to liberate ourselves. They were never here to help. They were here to rob. After decolonization, they continued to do so. They could no longer use political power. They influenced it indirectly, but they held on to the economic levers of these countries. They were dominating, they were benefiting, they were doing nothing to help us. They created banks that were instruments of subjugating us.
Mais personne n'a intérêt à ce que l'Afrique se développe trop.
But no one is interested in Africa developing too much.
Because if it develops tomorrow, let's imagine Africa develops its industry like South Korea did, a country that was as poor as Mozambique 60 years ago. If tomorrow it starts making cars, if tomorrow it starts refining its oil, if tomorrow it starts doing agriculture and transforming its agricultural products, it will no longer buy our imports. And so we are not interested in that situation. We are not interested. So the will of the rich countries. We are talking about geopolitics today. Everywhere we see, there is clearly no interest in these countries developing. These less developed countries.
Please watch this video carefully. You will understand the main reasons why Western powers prevent African countries from developing properly. Before we continue, like and subscribe to this channel for more informative videos like this one. Do not forget to share this video on Facebook and WhatsApp to open the eyes of as many Africans as possible. Thank you for your support. Let's continue.
There was this idea, actually in people's minds, that you develop a country with entrepreneurs. It's an important part, but it's not the main part. An industry is needed, a heavy industry. These countries export oil, export cocoa, export raw materials, but these raw materials they export are often processed in other countries. And processing is what creates jobs.
Quand vous avez une compagnie étrangère qui s'installe, je prends toujours l'exemple du Congo Brazzaville que je connais bien.
When you have a foreign company setting up, I always take the example of Congo Brazzaville, which I know well. Congo Brazzaville, over 90%, only exports oil. This oil is produced by whom? Exploited by whom? By mostly private companies. 60% total, 30% ENI. The Italian, 90% of the company. Then you have a few companies here and there, private ones. The public Congolese oil company is unable to do drilling. It is unable to exploit all of its oil. It collects part of the money, but it is unable to exploit it. So all the knowledge on production, on reserves, all the quantities, production volumes are decided by the private company, which does not depend on the country. So that's the first thing. There is a real asymmetry of information between the state and the company. The prices of their goods, 90% of exports, therefore oil, the price is not determined by Congo. It is determined by the financial markets. So, when there are tense geopolitical situations like now, prices go up, it benefits them.
Et l'État congolais rachète de l'essence à ces pays-là. Donc la réalité, c'est qu'il voudrait qu'il y ait une industrie qui puisse transformer.
When the price is zero, as in the COVID period, nothing comes in. Nothing comes in. So we can see that there is a very strong dependence. And then this product is exported, processed in France or elsewhere. And the Congolese state buys gasoline back from these countries. So the reality is that there should be an industry that could transform this production on the spot. And it is this one that would create jobs, refineries, distribution, etc. But to have that, what is needed? Funding is needed to finance heavy industry. It's not with €1 of microcredit that you're going to finance heavy industry. And this funding, if the banks don't want to lend it, who will lend it? It's China, but China is a country. It will lend it under certain conditions. Conditions sometimes on access to raw materials or more advantageous sharing of production for them. And so it does not allow them to be completely independent. And it must be kept in mind that rich countries have developed in a world where they created conditions that were favorable to them. The WTO, the World Trade Organization, is an organization that has favored rich countries much more than poor countries.
Pas à lever de l'argent.
Quels seraient les...
Ce que je veux ajouter, excuse-moi, je te coupe.
The financial system, with mostly European and American banks, the rich countries. And so rich countries raise huge funds to carry out their projects, while poor countries to carry out projects we know. That is to say, to do things we know, refineries, food, agricultural industries. We know how to do that. Well, they can't raise money. What I want to add, excuse me, I interrupt you. What I want to add is that we have often said in recent years that poor countries were not developing because of corruption. We had to find a reason. It's corruption, the informal economy. These people are corrupt. There is an informal economy. They do not respect the rules. They are corrupt. Some even went further by saying that they are a bit lazy. It has always been a bit like that. And we found the same kind of debate when there was the sovereign debt crisis in Europe, where we called the southern countries pig. They were called Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. They were called the pig. They were said to be lazy, that they were in the informal, that they were not like the Germans and the French. This debate already existed with African countries. They don't work, they are lazy. They don't have good training, they are corrupt. Very well, that's what we said. If tomorrow I were given the reins of Congo Brazzaville, and I was told what the formula is in the current conditions to get it out of underdevelopment and make the economy take off, it would be extremely complicated, and I would tell you that I don't have the solution. Because it's a country, in fact, that does not have control over development at all. Because it does not have access to financing, as I said. Because it does not control the main good it produces. Because it does not control the volume and the price. And so developing a country under these conditions is extremely difficult. So corruption is actually a collateral effect. The real problem is the World Trade Organization and the financial system as it was created. Would you say that there has been a stranglehold by the northern countries? I'll explain, for example. We are looking for what the exit routes are, and especially by whom, because you may have the preconceived idea of yes, the northern countries are going to help the southern countries again. But in fact, it is because there is a stranglehold and also an enrichment of the northern countries thanks to and by the southern countries. For example, Zambia just had extra time to pay back, but the debt was not written off or reduced, etc. There are also negotiations on the next contributions of rich countries for the upcoming 3-year period, which will soon begin and should end in December 2024. There are also many solutions put forward by the IMF, which are considered as not enough actually. Which way now do you think should be oriented towards? So it is exactly what you said. That is to say that in reality, Africa buys a lot of imports from Europe, and also mainly from France. And we buy a lot of things we need and don't produce, including oil and raw materials. So Western countries are not interested in Africa falling. Because if it goes very badly, if there is not a situation at least stable, what happens? We risk having fewer raw materials that we need, and in exchange, we risk selling them fewer things. So we have to maintain Africa in an intermediate situation, so that it is rich enough to buy our goods and stable enough for us to buy the goods we need, those we really need, energy and raw materials. But no one is interested in Africa developing too much. Because if it develops tomorrow, let's imagine Africa develops its industry like South Korea did, a country that was as poor as Mozambique 6 years ago. If tomorrow it starts making cars, if tomorrow it starts refining its oil, if tomorrow it starts doing agriculture and transforming its agricultural products, it will no longer buy our imports. And so we are not interested in that situation. We are not interested. So the will of the rich countries. We are doing geopolitics today. Everywhere, we can clearly see that there is no interest in these countries developing, these LDCs. Now, if I were in the place of Africans, it is very difficult. That is to say, for me, the first thing I would do is I would be much more aggressive in negotiation. Because if you don't have financing, then you can hold grand speeches. It's always nice. But once you get to the concrete, what is Africa today concretely? As it does not have access to financing, as it does not control the goods it produces, in volumes as in prices, it is trying today, for there to be activity, to attract as much foreign direct investment as possible, by creating free zones where very little tax is paid, saying that this is the only way we have to restart the economy. Which does not allow it either to develop its industry, because the industry that would come is much more powerful and much more established than the one that would develop and would be a nascent industry. So the first thing I would do in this situation, which is an extremely complicated situation, I would seek to be much more aggressive in the production shares. That is to say, when a foreign company comes, you have to impose things on it. The Gulf countries, Qatar, the Emirates at their time, when you came to settle with them for anything, you had to give a big part, more than 50%, to a local native, a local resident of the investment. It was mandatory. The WTO did everything to knock this out, but some countries held firm, except when they really needed it. They make exceptions at the Ministry of Economy. But when they estimate that the person has to give a part, he gives a part to the natives, which trains them. You see, for example, this type of measure could be applied by some African countries. If they applied it, of course, as a whole, it would be better.
Okay, guys, listen to this.
We are not given the free will to make decisions on our own mineral resources. There's always Big Brother who decides. And when you fight and say, no, we are not going to do this, they use the system to stop you. It's either they set you up with the opposition and they'll be supporting the opposition against you from the back, or they cause unnecessary chaos in your country so that you are not able to even govern your own people. They will do things to make you not to be functionable And of course, any country that don't have peace cannot develop. You have to have peace before you talk about development. I'll give you a simple example about Sierra Leone. Every mining company that is in Sierra Leone today is owned by a foreigner. Every mining company. If it's not the Chinese, it's the American, it's the British. Our electricity, Bumuda, is run by the British, and we still don't have light. We're looking for light, electricity. If you don't have electricity, how can you talk about education? How can you talk about health facility? How can you talk about improving the infrastructure of your country? We don't have electricity. Now, do we actually even have proper water, pipe-borne water, so that our kids will not be sick? We don't have those facilities. Why? With all the minerals we have, there is a cap you put. Before my husband became the president of Sierra Leone was benefiting, they said, what's the word? 0.000.1%. What is that? Basically, a company can take as much as $100 million out of the country in terms of minerals, and then they can just give the country $10,000. Now, what will $10,000 do for our health system? What is $10,000 do for our educational system? And these are the things I believe that are stopping Africa from progressing. We don't have a say. The sense about us celebrating independence, I don't know why we're celebrating independence, because we have
system. It's based on large multinational companies. It's based on private profits. It's based on a very, very low measure of international transfers to help poor people, sometimes none at all. It's based on extreme irresponsibility of powerful countries with regard to the environment. And it's based on a radical denial of rights of poor people, as we just heard. It's interesting, we heard from the Minister of DRC, what's wrong with your country? Well, we don't even start by saying the King of Belgium created a slave colony for 30 years. The government of Belgium ran the slave colony for another 40 years. The CIA assassinated your first popular leader, Mr. Lumumba, and then installed another dictatorship for the next 30 years. And then Glencore and others now suck out your cobalt without giving you tax income. We don't reflect on that. We say, what's wrong with you? Why don't you govern properly? And so we have a system, but we need a different system. We cannot turn this over to the private sector. We already did about 100 years ago. Not only to the private sector with the US military behind it, with the defense of these property rights in the Minister of Honduras's country, where United Fruit ran the country for a long time. And their attorney was the foreign minister of the United States, Secretary Dulles, and his brother was the head of the CIA and overthrew the next door neighbor, Mr. Arbenz, to make sure that United Fruit could have its property. So we have a system, but we need a different system. And the different system has to be based on principles of human dignity in the Universal Declaration, principles of sovereignty, principles of economic rights, because these are not nice things to do. In 1948, all the government said that food is a right, social protection is a right, not a nice thing, not a pleasant thing, a right. That was 73 years ago. The SDGs are nothing more than our generation's attempt to honor the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I come from a country that not only doesn't care about the world's poor, it doesn't even care about its own poor. 1 in 7 Americans is hungry right now. And they don't care. I mean, the poor people care, but one political party, all it cares about is cutting taxes for the rich and filibustering any solution. So we're in a world that's really tough. The private sector is not going to solve this problem. I'm sorry to say to all of the private sector leaders, behave, pay your taxes, follow the rules. That's what you should do. And what the governments should do is the following. They won't, but they should. First, the G20 should become the G21 by inviting systemically the chairperson of the African Union and the African Union to be the 21st country. The European Union is a member of the G20 as the EU. If you add the AU as the 21st for the G21, you add 1.4 billion people to representation at that crucial event. That will change decisively the discussion, because 1.4 billion people are not at the table for finance right now, and they need to be. So my first recommendation is the G21. I love the G20. Add one seat, 1.4 billion people with the AU represented. Second, we need an order of magnitude change of development finance. The rich countries just borrowed $17 trillion for COVID. The poor countries, nothing. Because the rich countries can borrow at zero, and the poor countries pay 5 or 10% coupon rates or have no access at all. So the world exposed its grotesque inequality this past year and a half. Rich countries didn't say, we tighten our belts, why don't you? My country spent $7 trillion of emergency funding, not one penny for anybody else, by the way. $7 trillion, it didn't even cross the imagination of the US Congress to include a few crumbs for the rest of the world. But the poor countries cannot borrow. That's what we should have heard from the World Bank. I didn't hear that from the World Bank. I didn't hear real numbers. Real numbers are in trillions right now because the world economy is $100 trillion a year. But we don't talk about real numbers. But my job, all I know in this world is long division. Divide by 100 trillion and then see whether you're talking about something real or not. So that's the second thing. We need massively to increase the lending and borrowing capacity of poor countries at near zero interest rates like the rich countries have. Then they could get something done. By the way, for COVID vaccines, what we really need is for the United States to sit down with China, with Russia, with the European Union and the UK one day around the table and allocate these vaccines rather than hoarding them. That's all it would take. And then we're going to have national pathways. This is a wonderful idea, but they're going to need financing. And so everything that I've been saying, I know the numbers. That's all I do for 40 years is add up what's missing. You want electricity? It has to be purchased. You want digital access? It has to be purchased. You want safe water irrigation? It has to be purchased. This is what I do for a living, is add up these numbers and then find out that then somebody makes up something and names 1/100th of what's really needed. It's not even hard. By the way, the IMF has done wonderful studies in the last 2 years showing that we have a financing gap of about $400 to $500 billion a year for the basics for the SDGs. They show the gap, but nobody comes up with the number, the solution, which wouldn't be so hard because that's just not a big number. It's 0.5 of 1% of world output. So if we really care, we wouldn't have the G7 saying, we love education, Therefore, we're going to give $3 billion for education. That's what they said at the summit. But what UNESCO has shown is that you need at least $30 billion a year, minimum. But nobody looks at numbers. They just make up nice check the box. So we need the real numbers of finance to back the national pathways. The final thing is we need the UN as the core and central institution of this world, period. Because this is the only way we're going to have a civilized world, is a strong UN. And it cannot be that the whole UN budget is less than my neighborhood's budget in New York. The UN core budget this year is $3 billion. New York City's budget is $100 billion. And then we say, why don't things work well? Because the rich are hoarding everything. Final point, rather than our 3 billionaires going in space, well, they could go into space and stay there and leave their money behind. That would be one idea. But another idea is we have 2,775 billionaires on the current list. Their combined net worth, 2,700, is $13.1 trillion. Now, I have it on good authority, you don't need more than $1 billion to be comfortable. But they have an excess of $11 trillion over just the $1 billion. So we should be taxing that and having a civilized world.
Hello guys, welcome back. I hope you have watched the full clip and you really see how this European country, how they normally treat with the black people, how they normally treat with the Jamaicans people, because this European country, they gave us the political colonization, but we have not been given the economical colonization, and that is what we are now looking for it. Because this lady is talking about hidden something in Caribbean, whereby how these colonizers came up in our country, how they started terrorizing our country, how they started really taking out our people. So she was talking about what we call it the Taino and also the Arawak in Haiti. This lady is talking about how these people were mining the gold in Haiti, in those Arak, those area. And the time European came in our countries and also in the Caribbean, they were taken away from this mining, and that is how these colonizers started mining the gold in Haiti. And now when you go to Caribbean country, most of these mineral salts, most of the resources are being taken by the European countries, and this also transferred to the Africa. Most of the African countries, they are poor because of these colonizers. These colonizers, they have never come out and really helping the Africans, really helping the Jamaicans. We normally say that we are given the democracy, but we claim that we are given the political democracy, but we have not given the economical democracy. And that's why here in Africa, we can do whatever we have. We can assemble our cars here in Africa. We can really do a lot of things here in Africa, and you find that our resources are being taken out by these colonizers, these European, those Western countries. They really like to exploit we as the African resources. And that's why a country like Congo is the largest mineral oil supplier, but you find that those Congo is importing the minerals from the other countries, and yet their resources are in their country. And then you find a country like Nigeria, largest supplier of oil, but you find that Nigeria is the poor in terms of the GDP. You find that Nigeria, even they are importing oil from the other countries. Where is this oil is going out? Where is this? Who is taking this oil? It's about the colonizers, and that's why they normally come out and say, no, you Africa, our leaders, they are the one who are selling our resources to their country. No, these people are still controlling our country. These people are really destabilizing our country. Looks now Haiti is being destabilizing because of these Western countries. They started by creating these what programs, and that's why now when you go to Haiti is falling because of the Western country interfering of Western country. And then these people, they like to divide us, and that's why they take our brothers from Kenya, the police from Kenya, to go and fight our own brothers. So they like to see ours fighting to ourselves, because black country is going to keep security to the black country. It's not that. This is how these colonizers are really controlling our economy, and that's why we have the puppet country like South Africa. 90% lands owned by the West countries. We go to Kenya, 40%. We come to Nigeria, around 60%. This is how the colonizers are really treating we as the black people. This is how the colonizers like to live, because when you come out and being a brave leader, they will make sure that you will follow. And that is the message that has been really hitting so many people. You have seen that interview about the professor from France. He was speaking in a French language, and the translation was very clear that they are about to Africa will not develop, Jamaica will not develop, Caribbean will not develop because of the exploitation of our resources going out to those France and also the Britain. And now I normally emphasize in unity, because to succeed, we as the Caribbean, we as the Africa, we as the Jamaica, we must have unity, so that we can really reaffirm and also emphasize coming up together and find a solution. But if you will allow these colonizers to come in our country, destabilize us, going out and whatever, we will not really develop. And that's how I like this time the upcoming leaders, they really coming out and speak the reality. That's why we have seen those old video, people are answering how these colonizers are being destabilized our country. Thank you so much for watching me. I'm your host, Team TC Reaction. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, make sure you subscribe, give this video a like, share, and don't remember also to comment. Bye for now. See you in the next one.